In this video, we're going to be talking about the Hungaroring Formula 1 circuit, one of my favorite circuits. I'm going to show you guys how to drive this circuit, some of the things you'll be looking for in terms of car setup. We're going to go through the technical corners together and then, like I say, do a few laps on the sim together as well. If you're interested in my thoughts on this circuit, how to set up the car and how to master this circuit, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Martin. I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. When we talk about the Hungaroring, it's a really interesting circuit because it's one of the few circuits on the calendar that has more than one long corner of constant radius. If you're not familiar with the 7 technical corners, you can download a PDF cheat sheet from my website. It's going to tell you the 7 technical corners and what to look for in each corner. Long corners of constant radius is one of the 7 technical corners, okay? Arguably, it's one of the most important corners because you can really play around with your rotation point in these corners. So what does that mean? That means you can brake earlier, get the rotation done earlier, get on throttle earlier. You can also brake deeper, later, targeting a later apex, carry more speed in, do more of a short corner technique, quickly pivot the car and then get on throttle and get out of there as well with a more straighter steering wheel. So definitely speaks to the short corner versus tight line approach. Again, you can go through my coaching section on my website, and the intermediates course is the one that talks to short corners versus tight lines. So I definitely recommend checking that out. But I just wanted to highlight to you guys that this circuit and these types of corners really highlights driving technique, car setup, and the differences in how drivers pick their rotation points. Because with the long corner of constant radius, it gives you that ability to play around with those points, okay? So when we talk about these corners as well, I think generally speaking, front grip is going to be, the holy grail of lower lap time in these corners. It's not like, for example, an increasing radius corner, which is where you're turning and on throttle at the same time. You don't really need front grip in those types of corners. But when you're braking into this corner and you're winding on steering as you go through the corner, then yeah, front grip is at a premium. You may have heard Max Verstappen this year in 2024 saying, a -5 brake bias and the thing still doesn't turn, and running out of front tires, running out of front grip. Yes, the Red Bull had its weaknesses in 2024 in terms of front grip, but the way Max drives these corners as well, also asking and demanding a lot of the front tires. So yeah, that's my general overview, overarching philosophy for the track. We'll bring up the track map together now and have a look at the technical corners and see if we have, or how many we have, and if we have any more. Alrighty, so hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. We've got the Hungary track map here, and we're just going to have a look at it together. So anti-clockwise circuit, down into turn 1 here. Left front, therefore, is going to be at a premium. Remember, if we draw the 4 tires and you're more often than not turning that way, the load is coming across the car that way. And like we said, because these are long corners where you're braking into them, it's the left front that's going to be copping it. That's what we call the loaded front tire. And therefore, it's very easy to lock up the unloaded inside front, which is this one here. So that's into turn 1, turn 5, the chicane at turn 6 and 7, turn 12 down the bottom as well, and the final corner, turn 14. Very high downforce track. As you can see, it's quite compact. We don't have like a massive straight or anything, so it's full downforce. And yeah, heavy braking into turn 1 as well. You can brake nice and hard. You can really smack the brake pedal into turn 1 because downforce is active. The track has a lot of grip, high downforce configuration, like we say. But then when you get into some of these long corners of constant radius, which I'm going to point out to you as we go through, you really can't smack the brake pedal because you've got steering lock at the same time. In accordance with the friction circle, when you steer, you've got reduced braking and accelerating capacity and potential, as well as if this is steering, braking and throttle. So when you're turning, you just got to be a little bit easier with the brakes, use the gears a little bit more. There's a few things you can do to get yourself out of trouble when you're turning and braking at the same time. So let's point out these long corners of constant radius. This is the first one, turn 2. It's a left-hander. There is a decent straight afterwards. There's also an interesting camber profile in the middle at the apex of this corner where it's really helpful if you can get in. It's quite hard to get into the apex in this corner in real life. Turn 5 is the other long corner of constant radius. It's a right-hander. not such a big straight afterwards. Also notice there's a direction change coming out of here, and we'll speak to that a little bit more. That's really important, that you come out and exit here, but then you want to come across here to then go into here. So then you ask yourself the question, is it worth me making that racing line switch or not? Another technical corner here, a chicane, characterized by the curbs, of course, and how you ride the curbs in chicanes is very important. And then obviously the final two corners, this N and U shape, both with racing line switches to be made into turn 13 and into turn 14 as well. So there's 4 long corners of constant radius and 1 chicane. It's a very technical track. So like I say, front grip's important, but also for the chicane, ride compliance, the way the car takes bumps. You know, this is an old school circuit, so it's quite bumpy. It's got elevation in places. The curbs are bumpy in places. So having a soft car in terms of springs, dampers, stiffness, tire pressures as well is really helpful. And of course, just packing the downforce on so that you can get into these corners nicely with a lot of front end, a lot of front grip. And then traction is going to be important as well, because you're accelerating from slow speed, particularly out of these last 2 corners, particularly turn 13. You're accelerating from a very low speed, and downforce is not active at that speed in turn 13. So you're just going to have to be careful the way you put your power down, the throttle mapping and throttle shape that you have, the way you short shift the gears, all those sort of things can help. On throttle differential, etc., can help just walk the car forward without too much trouble. Let's jump out onto the circuit and I'll show you guys around. Alrighty, let's take a look at this track. So they're going to feed us out into the last corner, which is good. We can talk about potentially getting a run onto the straight. If you're starting a qualifying lap, you know, sometimes it's a good idea to come out here, get on throttle nice and early and just nail the car on the exit to start the lap. So DRS down the straight, quite a short straight, it's almost over before you get up and going. You got the breaker boards on the left, and this is probably one of the heaviest braking zones of the circuit, again, because speed is high, downforce is high. Get through your gears, pretty standard stuff. Always don't turn in where you start to see that curb. If I can show you guys, you start to see a curb, not an indication to turn in. You know, you got to feel the geometry of the corner. It's more like around here, because that's going to allow you to power out. Notice that it just goes over a little crest there. So always traction's a problem when the car goes over a crest, because the rear gets quite light and you want to bring the car to the right hand side. One of the keys here is to try to be as parallel as possible to the track under braking. So what I mean by that is here, like with the steering wheel straight. But if you're kind of a lazy driver, you find yourself, and I do this sometimes, it's just like angling your car away from the corner. This gives you more work to do with the front of the car to get it in. We spoke about the elevation here in the corner camber. If you can get into this corner and into this apex earlier, I can't help but feel it's better, because it pulls you into the corner and then it gives you more grip, keeps the car more stable. Nail the throttle. This is flat, but in the wet, that would be an actual corner. It's always interesting to hear people say, oh, it's not a corner anymore, it's full throttle. Yeah, but in the wet, I bet you that's a corner. Trust me on that one. Heading up here, I love this corner here. It's really important you get the right front and right rear on this curb. And just when the car comes off the curb, that's when you want to turn in. So don't turn in from on the curb, but let the car float back to the road, bang, then you go in. Here, like I said before on the track map, you've got the direction switch to make. And you could argue that, let's say the blue line is the conventional line. You could argue, depending on how much time you have, whether or not it's just worth meeting up with this line a little bit later on and getting into the corner a little bit earlier. That has its pros and cons, which you can learn about, like I say, with the short corners and tight lines approach. Okay, chicane, here we go. So yeah, like I say, the curbs are interesting, and you want to have a look at these up close and say, okay, there's a flat one, but then there's a bumpy one or a higher one. That's not to say you can't use it. You just need to be aware. This one I probably wouldn't use, because I'm trying to get throttle and traction down, so I wouldn't go near the high one. Engine braking really important here, because you just want to click gears as you go through this higher speed section. Like come here and then click and have it find its rev and go in, so it gives you more rotation, It means you don't use the brakes too much. The same as this corner. It's fast right. You just want to use the gear like in that fashion to kind of keep the car settled and moving forward. Another heavy braking zone. I think this one is 12, if I remember correctly. Fairly similar to turn 1, to be honest, in terms of braking, brake balance, and so on. Important to just keep the car stable on the exit. And now you've got, again, another another racing line switch to make here as you go into this long corner of constant radius. So the two approaches are, do you go in like we are now, or do you come out short corner and then line it up and send it? And to highlight that to you in the last corner, it would be like, you know, short corner, line it up and send it like that. So I want you guys to play around with those rotation points, like earlier, later, you know, just different gears and different lines. You really need to, there's not like one size fits all. You just need to be aware of the pros and cons for each and then just play around with it as you go. I haven't done a few laps around here for a long time, so I'll be curious to see how I take these corners. Do I like, where do I naturally, because like I said, I haven't practiced here in ages. So where am I naturally inclined to go? I'll be interested to see that from my own point of view, because I haven't driven this in a while and I don't know which is the quickest way around. So with that said, let's do a hot lap. So there you go, guys. I hope that video helps you. I hope that lap helps you. I hope some of the explanations helped you as well. If you had a question or thought, drop it in the comment section for me below. I think into that second last corner, I just, like I said, pushed the brakes a little bit too hard and you saw the rear step out, had to catch it before the turn in. So those are the sort of things that can happen when you're braking and turning at the same time. And you just got to find a good brake balance and a good brake pressure that's going to get you out of trouble. But like I say, it just caught me by surprise because I haven't done many laps here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.